Now I have to say, with episode 6, the standout to this entire episode has to be that OST. For about a good half of this episode, my jaw was nearly on the floor by just the stunning use of instrumentals, vocals, and just everything in between. This soundtrack definitely is getting downloaded when this series completes because it really added to the atmosphere, primarily when there's that silent montage of Leon kind of waiting around for Violet. There's this beautiful piece of music being played. There's also some amazing music being played while they're on the rooftop watching the comet. Like, seriously, the soundtrack for this series is absolutely spot on, and this episode steals the show with just showcasing how brilliant its soundtrack truly is. And this week's episode of Violet Evergarden, minus even the amazing OST, was a really good episode. You know, I wasn't really sure at first how I was going to feel about Leon, because at first glance he struck me as a character who was going to annoy me, but by the time this episode wrapped up, I really enjoyed his story and overall where his arc went. Not to mention, he was more or less the spotlight for this episode, not even Violet herself. I think the reason I enjoyed Leon overall is mainly because of how they introduced his character, at first being a very arrogant and kind of stuck up in a lot of ways, but of course you understand that that's probably actually going to be the best partner for Violet, mainly because she doesn't show that many emotions and she just wants to get the work done, and he seemingly is just like, I'm the best, keep up with me, and obviously she can. But I like the idea of essentially everyone around him always seemingly shunning him and making fun of him and more or less putting him into an outcast situation, mainly because people look at him as only having his job because of who his parents were, and ultimately it seems like he's never really had a good life ever since he lost his parents. Father went on a mission, never came back, mother went after him, she never came back, so he's just been working away, hoping that they would one day return, never really living for himself, just more or less waiting day after day. And I like the idea of how Violet was used in this episode, because she was definitely a focus, but this was Leon's episode, and we're probably never going to see him again. But I like the idea of really focusing on him as a character, and really showcasing the kind of arrogance and the kind of personality he's giving people, but that's not who he truly is, and it's only because Violet's around him that he can start opening up, and by the time the episode wraps up, determine that he wants to explore the world and not just wait around to die another day. And I really like it. I think my favorite moment in the entire episode is when Violet stands up to more or less his bullies without even really realizing what she's doing, because they're trying to say, oh, you're a pretty girl, like you probably hate having him as a partner, no one likes him, he's a castaway, no one even thinks he's skilled enough to work here. And then Violet pretty much says the words that I think he always wanted to hear, that someone is the same as him. That she feels like, well, that's just who I am. I don't know my parents. I'm only here because of these reasons, and it just warms his heart, and I really enjoyed that because that's the moment where he starts shifting his character and starts realizing, like, maybe I actually like this girl Violet and I don't need to be such a dick to her. And I thought it was actually a very beautiful episode because that was the moment where I started realizing, I was like, okay, Leon's gonna have a purpose in this episode and he's not gonna be a disposable, arrogant douchebag. And once you see his backstory and what happened with his family life, it really gives you a good perspective of why he was acting the way he is, especially seeing how other people treat him. And I just love the idea of how Violet was used, because Violet, even though she is very blunt, even though she doesn't know how to use her words properly in every situation, that bluntness can actually be a very effective weapon for healing someone's heart, and we see it used perfectly in this episode because yes, we've seen her mess up with her words, not understanding human emotions, and even though she didn't quite understand what they were saying to her, the way she said kind of like these compliments and just this way of explaining that she's no different than Leon, it's the perfect mending tool for his broken heart, and I absolutely adored it, especially that scene at the rooftop when they're both talking. Of course, we know he's in love with Violet and that his love is probably never going to get fully returned, but I love the fact that when Violet is basically telling him that, yeah, if I heard that my major, if like the person that I care for is still around and needed my help, of course she would want to go help him, but she would also want to apologize for leaving Leon. Like, even though she doesn't quite understand how to really talk to people, even though she is in a position that she should know how to do it, it's just beautiful that she does have human emotions in these ways, and she just doesn't quite know how to express them, but even though she's not fully capable of actually expressing it, she can still warm people's hearts, and I love how Leon takes it, because of course, she loves the Major, she loves what Gilbert did for her, but of course she also understands that people around her depend on her, and even though she didn't know that Leon obviously loved her, she still wouldn't want to just leave and not say anything. I just love how Violet has been used over these 6 episodes. I know a lot of people were complaining about the anime original content. I absolutely loved it because we got to see the progression of her skills, and coming into this episode, all that anime original stuff was just perfect, really tied this episode together in my opinion. But I really like Leon as a character, and I pretty much have enjoyed every new character that we've seen, even if they are only one-off characters for the individual episode that we're focusing on them. It's still really good. I really enjoy the writing for this series. I really enjoy how Violet is being used in this series, and just overall, this was a stunning episode. Definitely in my top 3 out of the 6 for sure. Absolutely adore this, and I can't wait to see where Violet's adventures are going to take her next week. New characters that she's going to run into here, but seriously, that OST was absolutely fire. I just adored it so much. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think of this wonderful episode, and what was your favorite moment? Let me know down in that comment section below. And before you leave, smack that like button, share your support. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.